Hello guys, my name is Jordan Chihorno and I'm here today to talk to you about Asperger's syndrome and how it affects me myself, my personal experiences, and to talk about what it is. I'll try and clarify a little bit what it is and how it affects you in daily life. And so I've got my partner with me today to help me ask me questions, because I'm not so good at just blurring all out because I'm a bit nervous. So, Cheryl, do you want to ask the first questions, please?
What is Asperger's syndrome?
Asperger's syndrome is basically, it's a derivative of autism. It's not exactly the same, but it is on the same spectrum, and this spectrum is pretty big. Asperger's syndrome is characterized by lack of understanding of given situations, lack of emotion, lack of opinion in a sense, because basically the opinions are, if you ask somebody with Asperger's a question, you're likely to get a very direct answer, and if that answer you may have found it, he was a bit harsh in saying that, it was a bit mean to them, they didn't understand what they said was anything bad towards you. They merely asked the question, answered the question that you asked. And that's all it is. A lot of people mistake that for them being, they're just being mean for the sake of it. No, that's not truth. He literally, she or he, is answering your question directly to what you asked. Very much like a computer, Asperger's people. You know, there's one line, one way of doing it, and that's it. I also noticed that with Asperger's is that communication is extremely difficult. I find it difficult to communicate with others outside of my own family. I'm not very good with just mixing in general conversation, because I just don't understand how to do it. I do find that very difficult.
So what are your experiences with Asperger's?
My experiences with Asperger's started when I was, obviously when I was born, but obviously my experiences started with it when I was 5. I know my mum and dad noticed that, I have a brother, Jack, and we were home taught, and we'd be taught 5-6 hours every day, learning to read, learning 3 hours if you will, learning all the basics, and I would find it extremely difficult to conform to a system like that. I was always off. My brother was learning to read and write and do great things. I was off doing either writing music, or I was building generators so that we could watch TV that night. It was literally, I was always doing something else. I couldn't focus on this particular subject. It had to be that, and that one only. Some people can say they can mix that up with obsessive compulsive disorder. I disagree with that. Obsessive compulsive is part, I think, of Asperger's syndrome, but I think there are 2 variants. If you have a person who is Asperger, like myself, who is asked to do a job, for instance compose a piece for whatever, I would sit at that computer and that keyboard and I would do that until I finish it. Now that to me is tenacious. That means that is compulsive. It's not obsessive. However, if I have a really silly worry, that comes into my mind, and it says, you found a lump somewhere and you're gonna die, and you get things like that, and all sorts of things will then happen. It will get larger and larger, and you cannot get away from it. No matter how much you try, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it peaks. And that, you are literally concentrating on that more than anything else, and that is, in my interpretation, obsessive compulsive, because you are obsessing over it and you are continuously, compulsively thinking about it. So that, in that opinion, that's the difference between obsessive compulsive and tenacious.
With Asperger's, do you find it difficult to deal with people's emotions or understand emotions?
Yeah, I find it hard understanding what a person is feeling. Even if they're expressing it physically, or sometimes even saying it, because it's just words. And most people would say that, say that, for instance, he must be really cold, I'm really upset here, and he's not even saying anything, or he or she's not, they're not showing anything in their faces, they don't seem to be comforting. They must be real nasty people. No, not the truth. It's merely because they can't read your bodily signals. I've gotten better with it personally myself, with reading signals, because I've had my partner and my family to help me understand that this bodily signal means this. This bodily signal means this. That's how I learned, to a point. Of course, so if you speak to someone brand new, and then then that all disappears. But you've got something to go on by learning most on the average side of how people generally act. Like when they're having a chuckle, how do you know whether or not they're being sarcastic or not? Well, I can't tell you that, because I couldn't tell you. Because when I was, for instance, I was musical director for the local society, and I was always asking the pianist if I'd offended her, because I just didn't know if I had or not. I kept saying, "Are you okay? Have I offended you? Have I said anything horrible?" And she goes, "No, why do you keep asking?" Because I just don't know what you're doing. You know, when she says, "Oh, you've got to be careful there, Jordan," and so, well, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And what she was saying is she was saying, "Oh, you've just got to be careful." It wasn't actually my fault in the first place. She admitted that she said the wrong thing to me, but I took that as I'd done something terrible. And she said the wrong thing, and that blew up in my mind, and I thought I'd done something blooming awful. You know, but I'm always asking people, when you're shaking their hands and looking them directly in the face, "How you doing?" So then I try and understand that they are content with me, and that I'm not offending them in any way, because that's one of my personal worries, is that I'm always worrying I've offended somebody. And if we're having a chat and they walk off, I think to myself, what did I say? Did I say something? So how I go about, I don't fully understand it, so you see, so it's very difficult for me to show you how to understand it when I can't understand myself. But I am trying to express what I'm experiencing. Anyway, if you've got someone that you're having a laugh with, or you know personally, that's a bit different, because you've had time to get to know that person. You know their mannerisms, their accent, the way they speak, how they speak when they're not so happy, how they speak when they're angry. You've got to look at all these things and start bottling it up. Start putting anger into a box. Anger is associated with this kind of stance. Happiness is associated with this kind of with this kind of tone in their voice. So you start to remember the tones. Remember, as a musician, I remember the tones, not so much the bodily language. But some people who aren't musicians, or some people who are completely tone deaf, how are they going to manage it? Well, I would say we would look at bodily, how a person looks. I was taught that if I sit here like this, talking, I would be very closed off, and people, I'm very defensive. And I don't understand it, but I know that if I sit like this, I'm being open, and being kind and honest, and open to listening to what others have to say. So if you if you listen to a person's voice and you're not very good with understanding their resonance, their tone, then look at their bodily actions and learn from that. And that's all I really have to say about that.
How old were you when you were diagnosed? I
was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome in 2003/4, I think, at university. There was another peer there who looked at the way I was acting, the way I wasn't mingling with my peers so much, and basically concentrating on my work and only doing that, not responding to certain conversations, not reciprocating laughter in certain ways, and this person said, I think you should, go and see if you can be diagnosed for Asperger syndrome. So I went, and they did it straight away, and I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome. Anything else?
How does Asperger's affect your music?
As a composer, Asperger's, as from my point of view, Asperger's really helps in certain places because it enables me to focus on what I do, whereas I don't have many other things going on at the same time, unless it's notation. But I have one goal. If I'm going to write that day, then that's what I do. The hindrances of that, however, are the fact I don't eat, I don't drink, I don't sleep. I'll just work at it. So that can be a bad thing for health-wise if you look at it that way. But in the sense of getting the job done, I think, you know, I think in that sense it's a good thing. Like I said, it's not obsessive compulsive. Obsessive compulsive, in my opinion, is something you would apply to if you were worrying about something. And I tend to worry a lot about a lot of things, and I obsess over a lot of worrying. But I don't pass that over to obsessive with music. That is tenacious. I just want to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So yeah,
how did having Asperger's affect you as a child with your learning?
Basically, as a child, nobody knew about it. I mean, you talk about, this is 1982 when I was born, and in the 80s, Asperger's wasn't really, well, it wasn't around, you know, and nobody really knew anything about it. So, you know, I mean, like I said, I was always acting different from my brother Jack, and he would study down, buckle down and learn, and it looked like I was just being ignorant, you know, and I didn't want to know. And it wasn't because I didn't want to know, it's because I didn't understand how to sort this problem out. How did I concentrate? Well, how did I end up reading and writing and doing my arithmetic easily? Well, I did that by merely processing it in my own time. I found that the only best way, because forcing learning upon me wasn't working. So I found that the best way for me to get the 3 R's was to do it myself, not be taught, if you see what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I found it by doing it. It sort of opened up eventually. I got there, but as I said, most of my stuff was based on playing, you know, the violin, composition with tabulation, because I wrote it all down in numbers, in order to sketch out a piece of music. I didn't have staves or anything like that, or I didn't have notation. I would have a picture. So if I had a composition in my mind, I would draw the picture, and that would be the composition. That's what the composition would look like. There would be a road going down here, past the church, up there over the bridge, so I'd know exactly the bridge is the 3rd bar in the composition, and that's how I would do it. I would literally visualize the music as well as hear it play it. So that was all part of that. I mean, I used to have a lot of arguments with my parents because I just didn't understand what was going on, and their frustration with me not reciprocating what otherwise should be a normal conversation. Then I get frustrated because I don't understand. They get frustrated because I'm not responding to what they're asking me, and that can be a tough one. It can be hard to live with. For example, there was one time when I was about 11 years old, and I said to my mum, and I know the difference now, but it was still a direct question, like I mentioned earlier, and it seemed harsh, but it was a direct question. The direct question: how do I know that you're my mum? And now I understand how that could come across. But and then she got really upset, and I really didn't want to upset her because that was not the question. I just didn't know how I would know. I mean, obviously I didn't see myself being born, so that's why I asked the question. And my mum took it differently, and it all blew her right up, and eventually I understood what I'd actually asked. I meant nothing bad about it at all. I just thought to myself, how do I know? And then I read a book about genetics and how people look like each other when they're born and stuff like this, how it's passed down through DNA, and that answered my question. But it's simple things like that can really blow up, and then you get people. Then, you know, if you don't learn from these things, and it's very difficult to learn communication when you don't understand it in the first place. You know, as you go through your adult life, the way I handle it is I choose not to communicate too much with too many people, because I can't do it, or I'll appear to be a weirdo. Like, for instance, Jack takes me to his parties, and the only thing I can do is talk about music. I'll have a laugh and a joke because I've trained myself to understand how to do that. But once I've done that, I can't stay around and carry on talking. because it doesn't mean anything. So it's very difficult. So I mean, I live down here in the middle of nowhere, and there's two types of Aspergers I find: those that wish to communicate with others and be around the community, and others that wish to be on their own, and I am the latter. I prefer how I'm doing things. That's just the way I chose to do things. But what I would say for people out there who are finding it very difficult and maybe have nobody to help them out, is to try and seek out other people with an autistic spectrum, and talk to them, or go to your local GP and say, I would like to at least communicate with other people with similar conditions to me, so then I may be able to express myself and further my knowledge and communication. There is quite a lot to talk about when it comes to autistic spectrum. I don't know a lot about autism, because I'm not, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not autistic, in the sense that there are some people out there who are really autistic, and that is something I do not know about. So I'm not going to sit there and peddle something I don't know about. I'm just talking from my personal experiences with what I have. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. We should say thank you to Cheryl, and thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, pop back, give it a like, and subscribe. Thank you very much.